Welcome everyone to the Dreambuildrs podcast. I am super excited for this upcoming episode. Now, today we have a very special guest, and I am beyond excited to introduce to you Kimberly Spencer. Now, Kimberly is an award-winning high-performance coach, an international motivational speaker, and the founder of crownyourself.com. And she helps visionary leaders transform their self-limiting stories, build their empire, stand out fearlessly, and make the income and impact that they deserve. And I feel like that's exactly what we'll be talking about today. So, Kimberly, thank you so much for coming on the Dreambuildrs podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
All right, let's do it. I'm so excited to jump in and know everything about your story as well and what you're doing right now. From what you said last time, you have had a wide range of career experiences. You've been a screenwriter, brand manager, and you've also been owner of a Pilates studio. Could you please tell us a little bit more about what led you to create Crown Yourself, and that you really chose to build your own path right now? How did you do that?
Well, it really was about following my curiosity because when I grew up in Los Angeles, so in LA, the only career that I saw that people were making the income that I wanted to make and the impact that I wanted to make was in Hollywood. And so I said, okay, I'm going to be an actor, writer, director, producer. Like I wanted to be the female Clint Eastwood. And so I set out on my path when I graduated high school, and I dropped out of college 2 weeks with two full scholarships before I started, because I found this amazing acting class where Paul uh, Ashley Judd and James Franco had studied. And so I was like, it felt like that was where I needed to be. And it was only because I followed my curiosity. And so I followed my curiosity into acting and into screenwriting. And I was able to get my first feature film produced, written by, it was such an experience. And while I was supporting myself in Hollywood, I needed a bridge job, and I didn't want to wait tables. So was just open and curious of looking at like what could be a possibility for that. And a friend of mine from acting class actually shared with me about Pilates. And back then I was struggling with a 10-year battle with bulimia. And I was looking for anything that would make me feel good in my body. And when she showed me Pilates, I suddenly felt amazing. After a month of doing it, I was like, I need to teach this. And the beautiful part about being a Pilates instructor is I could set my own schedule. So it allowed me the freedom as a freelancer and as a new business owner, and the ability to do the other parts of the things that I wanted to do with my career. And so as I started to teach Pilates, I started to learn so much about the power of the mind, because I was around different people, 10 different belief systems every single day, with different ways of surviving. And through that experience, I saw the power of the mindset and how it really didn't matter. I would have people coming to me saying they wanted to look like this, or they wanted to tone this up, or they wanted to heal this. And for some I remember I had one client, she handed me a stack of magazine pictures, and I looked at them and I was like, you realize you look exactly like this already right now. And she's like, no, I need this toned up, and I need my deltoids toned up. And it showed me just the power of the mindset. And after being my career in Hollywood, and after I just got tired and burnt out of going out for the role hot girl number 5, like I was just tired of going out for roles that had no transformative or substance in them. I had the opportunity to write my first screenplay, get it produced, and I was like, that's maybe what I want to do, is do just screenwriting. And then when I got to the premiere of my film, I realized I was only 90% fulfilled. And so I got curious again. And I was like, well, was like a dream come true. What was it about this thing this dream that I wasn't 100% fulfilled by? And I realized that I preferred another level of control. So I would prefer to be a producer or a director as well as a screenwriter. But that wasn't entirely what I wanted either. It didn't feel like, I saw what producers were doing and I was like, that's not really the career I 100% want. I saw what actors were doing. I was like, that's not 100% the career I want. I saw what Pilates instructors were doing and I was like, but within the first year of teaching Pilates, I'd grown to be the youngest, highest paid, most fully booked instructor at the studio that I started working at. And I was like, there was really no place to go beyond there except for starting my own private
Hmm.
studio, which I ended up doing. But from those experiences, each one, when I questioned, like, why wasn't I 100% fulfilled? It allowed me to find those answers. I was open to not knowing and finding an answer. And 2 weeks after my film premiered, I got a text from a friend whose friend had gone and her son had gone to the premiere, and it was at that movie premiere that my friend told me that her friend's son changed his life because of the film and the story that he saw on screen. And I was like, that is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to change, I want to transform people's stories. And I'd already been doing that with
Yeah.
Pilates. As a Pilates instructor for years, I'd transform people's stories about what was possible for their body after they'd, had surgery, or after they'd given birth to a baby, or after they, in training for a marathon and helping my clients prepare their bodies for certain rigorous experiences. So I'd done that in the form of fitness. I'd done that in the form of screenwriting and movie making. And then I had this opportunity to come on as a consultant for a backstretching device that was being brought to market for a startup. And I said, I saw the product and I was like, I don't just want to be a consultant, I want to be a partner. And I thought maybe I'll transform people's stories through this business. I'll make a ton of money and then I will go off and do something different. And so I leaned into this backstretching device business, this e-commerce business for 2 years. And it taught me so much because I learned very quickly that, the mistakes that entrepreneurs make, we made a lot of them in that first business, in that e-commerce business. And I also learned about the power of values, because so often as entrepreneurs, especially when you're going in on a partnership, you get very excited by the idea and have passion for the idea. But after a while, when the rubber hits the road and you start to face challenges, maybe monetary challenges, maybe the sales aren't coming in as fast as you wanted, which were many of the challenges that we were facing, we started to hit a values misalignment. And so fast forward 2 years into that company, I get a phone call from my partner and he says, I've spoken with lawyers and I want you out of the company. And the only reason was we just had a big, massive values difference. Like, he valued stability and structure and had some different opinions as to how he wanted the company to go. And I was very much about fast-paced results and, like, let's just test things, see if they work, and keep going. So it was a different pacing for both of us. And so 3 months into negotiations, we signed the buyout agreement. 3 weeks before I walked down the aisle to get married to my husband, I run off on my honeymoon. And while spending 6 weeks at an Airbnb in Italy, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do when I get back. Because I had loved business. I loved having that e-commerce company. I loved seeing it grow. I loved, getting our product featured in, like, on the billboards at Times Square. I loved seeing the success of it. I loved seeing the client testimonials. I loved having my private Pilates studio, but I just got so tired with teaching Pilates. And I knew that there had to be something more. And I loved writing and I loved crowns and I loved beauty pageants. And I had all these seemingly unrelated interests. And I remember brainstorming one morning after way too many espressos with my husband. And we were just thinking of all these ideas of things that I had. Like, I'd mastered the body, and because I'd overcome 10 years of a bulimia battle with no psychological or medical intervention. I'd overcome abusive relationships, and I'd found my soulmate, my amazing husband, who's just phenomenal. He's currently watching the babies right now. And then I had success in business, and I was like, I love all three, and it's like the perfect holy trinity. And I leaped off the couch and I was like, crown yourself. And my husband's like, what's that? I said, I have no idea, but that's the name of my company. That's what I'm doing. And he said, okay. And so I immediately got to work at doing all the things that spin the wheels. So I bought a whole bunch of, like, production equipment, and I got a fancy website, and I got a logo designer, and I got all of these great things that make a business look nice. But for a year and a half in my business, I actually wasn't making any money. And why? Because this is what really led me to the discovery of how deep belief systems are. And that's what I work on primarily with my clients, is the belief systems that they have about their business. Because for that year and a half, I had was operating by all those old fears and beliefs of not enoughness that were the root cause of my eating disorder, that were the root cause of me choosing poor partners before I met my husband. They were the root cause. And suddenly, through the buyout experience, they had all been brought to light by quote unquote professionals, aka lawyers, that when suddenly I'd never had any doubts about my ability to succeed. I'd never had any fears about being rejected in any past career. I was always known as the go-getter. I was the hustler. I would go out to like production offices and meet with them like blindly and just say like, hey, I'm looking to learn more and have more experience. Can I PA for you? So I had always been very audacious with my asks before, but then through going through that buyout experience, it crushed my self-worth. It destroyed my beliefs in the competence of the skill sets that I'd had. And so for a year and a half, I just dabbled and I did what I tell what I see with so many entrepreneurs when they're first starting out is doing productive procrastination, where they're doing all the things that may make a business look nice, but they're not really focusing on that one thing that actually drives business, which is sales. And in order to do that, it's building human to human relationships. But fast
Wow.
forward to a year and a half later, I found out I was pregnant. And then that was when I was like, well, nope, no longer can I dabble. No longer can I pretend to be a business owner. No longer can I say I'm doing this thing. I'm either like in it and going to do it, or I'm going to stick to teaching Pilates because that's like I needed to provide for my child. And I just was unavailable to just A, I was unavailable to keep teaching Pilates, and B, I was unavailable for the person that I had become through that year and a half of dabbling.
Mm.
Because in that year and a half of dabbling, my mindset had gotten to a place where I was full of complaining. I was continuously blaming my former business partner, and he hadn't been a part of my life for a year and a half. And I was blaming myself, I was blaming other people. I was so stuck in a victim mindset. And that was when I just knew I could transform it because I transformed my mindset before with bulimia. And so I immediately got enrolled in a certification course for NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnosis. I knew I had to fast track like learning what these beliefs were and uncovering them and releasing them. And after I'd gotten my certification and started working with a coach, within 3 months, I got my first $2,000 client, and then I got my first $5,000 client, and then it just grew from there.
Wow. Thank you so much for this very energetic introduction. I really love it. I love how you tell your story with all that passion. And it seems like, from early on that you have been very kind of being aware of your own path because you always kind of followed your curiosity. And that's not what like many people do. So it brought you in a lots of amazing experiences, I guess, in your life that taught you a lot about
Yeah.
life. I think that's very, very interesting. Um,
I think following your curiosity is not something that's always supported in the traditional role of, here's the path that you have that people have laid out for you for what they think success is.
mm,
Of you go to school, you go to college, you get a good job, you work, maybe then you start your business, but like there's a perception that there is a linear path. And what I've found through 5 years of coaching entrepreneurs and through my own journey with entrepreneurship is that success isn't linear in any way, not with success in relationships or success in business or in your career.
yeah, 100%. And what I also liked about what you said is that, you always had kind of question about yourself that like, am I like 100% fulfilled? And in most of the things you were like, well, maybe 90%. So what can I get out of it more, and, finding back the power of values and so on. So I think you have been kind of very well aware of, building your own path to what you're doing right now. And I would love to know, like, what does it mean for you to really build that own path to, build that empire, so as you say, with Crown Yourself? What does it mean for you?
For me, it means freedom, like the ability to create and design a life. I mean, the one of my favorite quotes is from Sigmund Freud, and he said most people don't want freedom. Most because with freedom actually requires personal responsibility, and most people don't want personal responsibility. And that's the thing is that I had to learn at an early age. I learned it around 17 when I learned that you actually have control over your circumstances, and you can control by taking personal responsibility that you are 100% at cause for everything in your life and for the attitude that you're bringing to it. That was not something I grew up with. That was not a mindset that I grew up with. I grew up in a home with my dad was an addict, my mom was a codependent, and everything was somebody else's fault, and everything was reactionary. So there was no choice in being able to choose your attitude or choose your emotional state or choose your path. Even though, well, choosing your path was one thing that I actually did see my parents do because they both were kind of the black sheep of their own families by starting their own business. And they actually became very successful despite my dad's demons that he was dealing with, in that they just through sheer hard work built a multi-million-dollar company even over the course of 30 years. And I was along for that journey. I mean, my mom was pushing me in the stroller, passing out flyers, doing the entrepreneur hustle. Like, so I grew up learning that journey, and that journey was also very much fostered by my parents. So I do have to give them a lot of credit for that ability to follow my curiosity, and the fact that they didn't really follow a proven path, and so they allowed me not to as well. And so I didn't have to have those standards or perceptions of those rules that I needed to live by.
I see, and that's a great learning school, right? So that's very, very good.
Learning
Yeah,
school of hard knocks, baby.
yeah, yeah. But well, I think in the end, you also get that learning school if you follow the kind of, let's say, typical career. Because I've been the kind of typical career where I went from school to university, kind of getting good grades, and then landing a great job in a multinational, building a, high performance career. But then finding out that in the end, that also didn't work for me. Not
Yeah.
finding enough fulfillment and enrichment back in my life, and then you also can get that kind of realization moment, like kind of sliding doors moment of maybe I should do something else, right?
Yeah.
um, Now I would love to know, like, from all the experiences that you had in your life, like, I feel like you're really building, like, following your own path. What has been like some of the key levers, or like key how do you say it? Like the key moments for you to follow your path and start building that, the most important things in there?
I think well, one was definitely finding out I was pregnant. That was a key lever, because either when you're stuck in and you feel stuck, either something externally is going to change or something internally is going to change. And what I found is it's actually the change is not just like, oh, I need to go work out. The change is I'm elevating into a different role than what I was living at before. And so for me, the role of business owner didn't scare me enough. The role of mom did. And I knew that the mindset that I was in was not the mindset that I would want to be at for my child. And I've also always known that I am never going to be the mom who is just a mom. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Like, to the moms who do just momming, like, rock on. I just know that being a mom makes me a better coach and a better business owner. And being a business owner and a coach helps me be a better mom. I'm like coaching my 4-year-old every day, all day. Like, right now. Oh man, that one's a tough one. But
Very
and
good.
that's the beautiful process of also having kids, is they can be such a reflection back to you as far as what you're looking to grow and what you're looking to build and who you are and all those insecurities that are holding you back, and the things that you really want, and the things that you really don't want. I mean, one of the things that I see with most of my clients, they come to me with the desire to build a business that will give them more freedom. And yet they're working so many hours. They're working like 18 hours a day, crazy hours, 6 days a week, busting their butt. And I'm like, is that freedom to you? And the thing is that they're building it, but they're stuck in an old programming. They're saying that they want freedom, but freedom is really scary. And freedom also requires the responsibility and the ownership to say, I'm going to own my time. And that means I'm going to take days off. That means that I'm going to have to build my business to a level of structure to where I remove myself from being the bottleneck, so that I can take days off, so that I can do things that I want to do with my family, instead of being in this constant busyness, which can very commonly be a trauma response to. I work with a lot of people who have experienced trauma in their childhood, and that chronic busyness is very much the desire that there always needs to be some sort of stimulant, because that's, especially if you grew up in a trauma environment like I grew up in an addict environment, that's something that's very poignant, that there's always a stimulant. There's always like, well, let's see if what could go wrong. Let's see what could go wrong. And so learning how to trust yourself, that was a big lesson that I've had to learn over the course of the years of growing my business, learning how to trust myself, learning how to make decisions with quickly and swiftly, and trust that if I don't make the right decision, that's gonna reveal itself quite quickly, and I will know and I can pivot. But the thing that I see kills most businesses is the deference of decisions, in not deciding, in delaying, and in, putting that thing off, not wanting to look at that thing. Like for me, for a year and a half, I didn't want to look at my bank account. I didn't want to look at the fact that I had no sales coming in. So I didn't look at my bank account. I didn't look at, the sales coming in. I just knew that the bridge job that I was working at, teaching Pilates and from my own private studio, that's where money came in. So I had money, but I would never look at my Crown Yourself bank account because I knew that there was nothing in it. And that realization, we can only change what we're actually choosing to be aware of. And I think entrepreneurship can be it's like personal development on steroids, both entrepreneurship and parenting. They can definitely be personal development. Yeah, they're personal development on steroids. You're just like, because your business is so often a reflection of you. And so in order to grow your business, you have to elevate your role. And most people, when they first start a business, they go from, especially when they go from like having a job, they go from, oh, well, I was really good at marketing, and so I'm now going to go and start my own marketing company. Well, now you're really good at marketing, but now you've also become financing, bookkeeping, marketing, sales, integration, vision, holding all of the operations management. You've gone from having one role to having 24 at least. And so it goes into, how do you elevate your role to actually being the CEO, the visionary, and holding the vision for the company while also being able to stay and operate in your zone of genius.
I love that. Now, Kimberly, what you said in the beginning is that most of us, are still kind of like stuck in our programming when we want to build things, for example, when we want to make the leap from corporate to entrepreneurship. Like what you said as well, I think is super important, is that you kind of need to build that trust in yourself to start acting and standing up and building your business. Like, how did you do that? And what is kind of advice that you can give for people to start building that trust within yourself, to finally start building a business that you really love and become exactly what you say, the CEO, the visionary of the company, and lead other people and inspire others to do so as well?
Great question. Yeah, the ability to build that trust comes from the certainty of being able to produce results. And so the only results that really matter in business, when you're starting a business, is sales. That's the only result that matters. It doesn't matter how many podcast episodes you have out, or how many blogs you produce, or if you have like a really nice website. What matters is actually having sales. So for me, when I shifted my mindset and started putting myself out there for sales and to make a sale, I built up enough certainty and trust within one sale. I got a $2,000 client, and that was as much as I had been making teaching Pilates at this at this chiropractic office that I had taken a job at. That I knew that one client compared to working for 4 weeks, like that was a no-brainer to immediately say. I knew if I got it once, I could get it again. Now that level of certainty and trust is my level of certainty and trust in my skill set to be able to produce results, because I just had to remember who I was. I've always been good at sales. I just didn't remember that I was. I'd had all this plagiarized programming, as I call it, from old beliefs and fears and things, of fears of judgment, fears of rejection. But meanwhile, I just didn't trust myself in that. So once I made that sale for me, I was like, done. I know I can do this. I know I can do it again. But other people, like I have a girlfriend of mine, it took her 6 months to leave her corporate career because she needed to build up to having a 6-figure income before she felt comfortable leaving her corporate career. She needed to make sure that her business could sustain itself at 6 figures because she had 4 children. So it was a different level of certainty and trust that she needed. But the same was true for the certainty and trust, she only needed to produce sales. So we gain that certainty and trust in our own business is when we start putting ourselves out there as a business owner, and we start overcoming that imposter syndrome, and we start asking for those sales.
Yeah, I totally see what you mean. And I think it's important that you mentioned as well that you started having a kind of a mindset shift in yourself. Can you tell us what that mindset shift was exactly about when you said like, okay, and now I'm starting to look at sales
Mm-hmm.
and not anymore at what you were used to do? Like, what did you do there in order to start bringing in more money into your company and feel like, this is what I'm actually doing. And now I feel like, I get excited and inspired by what I'm doing as well.
A few things. One was I did timeline therapy and hypnosis and NLP to help eradicate some of the negative emotions that I'd really been living in for quite some time. That was a huge shift. The other shift was actually a client realization that I had. I was teaching Pilates, and I just gotten new business cards printed up. And I remember these business cards because they were really pretty. And they said they had crown yourself with all like this amazing photo shoot that I did. And then they had a picture of me on the back with my name, and it said CEO. And my client, I said, oh, this is my company. This is what I'm building. And he looks at me, and he was a director of photography for major movies. And he looked at me and goes, I don't know what you do. And I was like, what do you mean? It's crown yourself. It's like, and he's like, CEO of what? And and it was it hurt like crazy because I was so proud of these freaking business cards. But at the same time, I was so grateful for that feedback because I had the realization, oh my gosh, I'm like CEO of nothing. And there's a big difference between a CEO who's running a company with 500 employees and a CEO who's a solopreneur. There's a big giant difference as to the level of responsibility, the vision that they're holding, and their operating strategy of how they are literally operating on a daily basis. The solopreneur who is CEO, quote unquote, is doing everything for everything in her business. She's doing the marketing and the bookkeeping and the this and the that. Meanwhile, the CEO, who's CEO of a company with 500 employees, they're not in the mailroom like tweaking the opening the mail. They're not like on the marketing page tweaking the call to action button and like editing it inside their programming. They're holding the vision for what that will look like, and they have other people to do that for them. So there's a big difference as the level of doing, and that mindset shift alone was huge. And the other one was seeing myself as no longer holding myself to the standard of my future self, no longer the standard of my present self. And when my client asked me that question, I suddenly had this like aha moment of the CEO version of me, the CEO version of me asking me, would I be fired for the quality and quantity of my output? And I really sat with that question, and I was like, yeah, 100%. I would have been like, if I was a salesperson, if I had a salesperson now who hadn't produced sales in 2 months, they would be fired. Now, wow. But a year and a half, like a year and a half with no sales, no, of course I'd be fired. So I had to evaluate myself, not from the perspective of where I was, but from the perspective of where I wanted to be. And when I looked at myself as my future self, and looked back and really asked that question of like, would the future me, who is making hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in her business, fire me for the quality and quantity of my output currently? Yes. And the answer was like, yes. And I asked that question regularly of most of my clients of, would the future you fire you for the quality and quantity of your output? Like, and more often than not, I get most of my clients looking at me like a sad puppy. Like they're like, oh yeah, I totally would be fired. Because when you hold yourself to that different standard, when you elevate your role and you elevate your vision to looking from that perspective, there's no way that most of us would tolerate the standards that we're operating by in our present circumstances
Wow.
because of how far
Hmm.
and how big our dreams are as to where we want to go,
Hmm.
especially high achievers.
Yes, yes. Kimberly, I think that's like such a kind of brave question to ask yourself, because many people perhaps wouldn't ask even this question yourself and have this, evaluation and reflection of yourself, like, am I actually doing what I'm doing, and am I producing enough output? I think that's a
Yeah.
very brave question to ask yourself. So and then having that reflection, like, oh yeah, shit, actually I'm not, so let's move forward, right?
Shit, I'd be totally fired. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and then that was what shifted. I said, well, what, like, the follow-up question, what would need to shift then? Obviously sales.
Hmm.
Like, the one thing, the business wasn't making money. I needed to make some sales. And so once I started putting myself out there, and I made that my sole focus for 3 months. And for 3 months, I got 3 months worth of no's until I got one yes. And then once I got that one yes, I was like, done. I can do it.
Yeah. All right, Kimberly. So I would love to move into the last question.
You
Um,
got it.
and this is a question I always ask my guests, and that is like, obviously you've kind of found what your purpose is right now. But what has been the most important thing for you to really live it out? Because finding your purpose is one thing, but I believe that living it out is something else.
Mm-hmm. Courage and faith.
Hmm.
100%. Because knowing what your purpose is great, but most people are scared of their genius zone. In fact, pretty much every client that I've ever worked with over 5 years has been scared of living into their genius zone because it goes against every single piece of plagiarized programming. You have to work really hard because your genius zone comes easy. Like this, what we're doing now, I'm like, this is easy. This is fun. And yet this could also be lead generation. It could be sales. Some of your audience may like be interested in working with me. So, but this is fun. Like this gets to be me being me 100%, sharing my story, serving and selling. And yet so many people would fear that because they're like, "Oh wait, this is too easy. Lead generation should be hard. Building my audience should be hard. Marketing should be like," we have these beliefs that things should be hard. And so we tend to lean away from those things that are easy because they're easier, from those things that are easy because we're so naturally good at it. And those things that are in our zone of genius, it takes courage to face that plagiarized programming and say, "Oh wait, I can actually work less. I can actually live into that dream of actually taking time off to spend time with my kids. I can actually structure my own schedule so I have afternoons off so that I can hang out by the pool and go to the park." And like, that's something that people don't build that structure of freedom in because they're lacking courage of going against the plagiarized programming that they've had. And so if you have the courage and you have the faith and you trust and also the longevity of your dream, because your purpose isn't going to be achieved in a day. It's not going to be achieved in a week. Like, it
100%.
is an
Hmm.
ongoing process. And so if we can trust in the longevity of the dream, that if we haven't achieved it yet, that doesn't mean that we're not going to achieve it. The courage to make the decision means that you have cut down any other possibility of not being successful, and that you will be successful, and that you will do what it takes until it takes. And then when it takes, you're going to keep on deciding to be courageous and moving forward and being successful. And that's really where the courage comes in, because so often we're going to face those demons of doubt and self-sabotage and fear, and the fear of rejection, and the fear of judgment, and the fear of what will people say of me, and the fear of I'm not good enough, and all of those fears and beliefs. And the bigger your dreams are, the more you're going to face those. But they don't have, the voice of that fear doesn't have to be so loud, because eventually you get used to having those courageous moments of saying, you know what, I thank you, ego, thank you, fear, for showing up in my life again. I'm glad that you've made me aware that I'm going to another level, that I'm expanding, that I'm going to bigger heights, that I'm, being seen by more people, that I'm helping more people, that I'm bringing in more money to then help more people. And okay, I'm going to still go for it anyway. And thank you for, pitching in ego. I'm gonna be courageous and continue to step into the arena and continue to do the thing that scares me. And that's where I see most high achievers get tripped up, especially after they've achieved some level of success in a former career or in their current career, because they get to a level of success where they're comfortable, and that what made them successful on the rise and on the climb there were those acts of courage. They were those big daring asks, those audacious asks. But once they get to that level where they're comfortable and it's good, that's when we got to flip the courage switch again to climb higher and to go farther, because otherwise you just start coasting. And so that's where it takes even more courage, because there's the perception that there's even greater risk when you've already achieved so much.
Wow, Kimberly, thank you so much for sharing this. I'm not going to add any more to this because I think you mentioned the key topic. So I think this was absolutely great. Kimberly, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, for sharing your story so authentically. I loved your energy. Please let us know what the best places are that people can find you and your work if they would love to know more about you.
Yeah, if you liked what I had to say, then definitely pop on over to crownyourself.com. And if you want to have a conversation, just click the button that says work with me. And I look forward to chatting.
Awesome. I'll make sure that's all your links will be dropped down in the show notes below. And once again, thank you so much for coming on. And who knows, we might see each other in the future.
Yes,
awesome.
hopefully so.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on, and see you soon, Kimberly. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.